It was Saturday, June 10, 2023, barely 12 days after Nigeria swore in a new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. A man sat quietly in the back of a Hilux truck, the engine still running, his eyes fixed ahead as though searching for a way out. Moments later, armed men stopped the vehicle. His escape had come to an abrupt end. That man was Godwin Emefiele, until just 24 hours earlier, the powerful governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Once one of the most influential figures in the country, he was now a fugitive, cornered by the very system he had controlled for nearly a decade. But why was he running? What had brought one of Nigeria's most powerful financial minds to this desperate point? To understand, we must rewind a few months earlier to February 2023, just 2 weeks before the presidential election. Inside the central bank's foreign payment office, a shocking discovery was made. $6.23 million had vanished. It wasn't a simple error. It was an audacious inside job, executed with chilling precision. The money had been withdrawn under the guise of a presidential directive, a letter dated January 23, 2023, supposedly signed by then-President Muhammadu Buhari. The document claimed the funds were meant to support foreign election observers, but Buhari had never issued such an order. The letter was a forgery, a gateway to one of the most daring financial crimes ever committed within Nigeria's apex bank. And as investigators soon discovered, this was not an isolated incident. It was only one piece of a far larger puzzle, a trail that would expose an empire of corruption worth over $30 billion, all revolving around one man, Godwin Emefiele. Was he a mastermind? Or merely the fall guy for a deeper, darker network of corruption that ran through Nigeria's financial core? To answer that, we must go back to where it all began. In 2014, Nigeria's sitting central bank governor, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, was abruptly fired. His removal came after allegations of financial recklessness and misconduct, a move that shook the nation's financial and political circles. President Goodluck Jonathan needed a replacement, fast. He needed someone loyal, respected in the banking industry, and capable of restoring calm. Among the names that surfaced was that of Jim Ovia, founder of Zenith Bank. But Ovia declined, and instead he recommended one of his protégés, Godwin Emefiele. Emefiele's rise had been steady and strategic. He started as a university lecturer in finance before joining Zenith Bank, where his discipline and loyalty earned him Ovia's trust. Under Ovia's mentorship, Emefiele climbed the ranks. By 2010, he became the bank's CEO, leading Zenith through massive growth and establishing it as one of Africa's largest financial institutions, with billions in assets and international recognition. So when President Jonathan appointed him as governor of the central bank in 2014, it seemed like a triumph, a reward for hard work, intelligence, and dedication. But what looked like a proud career peak would soon turn into one of the most controversial chapters in Nigeria's financial history. A year after Emefiele's appointment, Jonathan lost re-election to Muhammadu Buhari. With that change of government, the central bank, which was supposed to remain independent, began to drift dangerously close to politics. Under Emefiele's leadership, the CBN's independence eroded. What should have been an apolitical institution became deeply entangled in the administration's agenda. One of his earliest challenges was managing the naira. During his Senate confirmation, Emefiele promised to protect the currency and avoid devaluation. But as oil revenues fell, foreign reserves dwindled, and investors lost confidence. The naira spiraled into one of its worst crises in history. Despite introducing multiple interventions, the currency collapsed from 171 naira per dollar to over 750 on the black market. Officially, it stayed at 461, but few businesses could access dollars at that rate. The system became a breeding ground for corruption. Those with connections allegedly bought dollars at the official rate and sold them at the black market, making massive profits in a racket known as forex arbitrage. Yet Emefiele wasn't all failure. He had some bold economic ideas. He wanted to reduce Nigeria's dependence on oil and boost local production. One such initiative was the Anchor Borrowers Program, designed to empower small-scale farmers with loans to increase food production. By his account, over $1 trillion naira was dispersed to millions of farmers, and he even claimed Nigeria had achieved rice self-sufficiency. But the reality told a different story: corruption, inefficiency, and unfulfilled promises. Many farmers defaulted, projects collapsed, and billions vanished into thin air. By 2022, the political tide was shifting again. As Nigeria prepared for another election, whispers emerged that Emefiele himself might have political ambitions. Soon, a group of farmers, allegedly his supporters, purchased a 100 million naira nomination form for him to contest the presidency. That act alone violated Nigerian law. As CBN governor, he was barred from engaging in politics. Instead of resigning, he secretly sought court approval to run while still in office. The court rejected his plea, but the damage to his credibility was done. Then came the fateful decision, one that would ignite chaos across the nation. Emefiele announced a redesign of the naira, claiming it would curb vote buying and reduce counterfeit money. But the timing, just weeks before a national election, raised suspicions. The rollout was disastrous. Cash shortages crippled the economy. People couldn't access their money. Protests erupted, and banks were attacked. Behind the scenes, questions emerged. Was this about economic reform, or was it a political move to manipulate the election? Shortly after President Tinubu took office, Emefiele was suspended. The protection he once enjoyed vanished overnight. A special investigator was appointed to scrutinize his 9 years at the central bank. What they found was staggering. The investigation revealed that the naira redesign wasn't properly approved, neither by the CBN board nor by the president. Yet billions were spent, 61.5 billion naira to be exact, on printing the new notes. Out of that, 31.8 billion was paid to a contractor under questionable circumstances, and when the project failed, another 1.7 billion naira was quietly spent on legal fees. It turned out that Emefiele had not consulted the central bank's board until weeks after the contract was awarded, a direct violation of the CBN Act. He had also unilaterally changed the scope of the redesign without presidential authorization, but that was only the beginning. Investigators uncovered hundreds of secret bank accounts scattered across the United States, the United Kingdom, and China, none approved by the board. These accounts reportedly held over $500 million in fixed deposits. Meanwhile, CCTV footage from February 2023 showed cash being discreetly moved out of the central bank vaults, the same $623 million linked to the fake presidential letter. Officials later confessed to their roles, but the masterminds behind the operation remain unknown. And then came the Naira project, Nigeria's attempt to create its own digital currency. Announced in 2021, it was hailed as a bold innovation. But like many of Emefiele's initiatives, it was riddled with irregularities. The project's cost ballooned from 9 billion to over 11 billion naira, without proper budgetary approval. The CBN couldn't even produce a formal letter of presidential consent, only a link to a public speech. Further investigations revealed absurd expenditures, billions paid in staff-feeding allowances, classified as project costs. Then came revelations about COVID-19 relief funds. The CBN managed over 9 billion naira in donations, but investigators found suspicious transfers totaling a mind-numbing 1.6 trillion naira, over $2 billion US dollars, with little to no documentation. Funds meant for health care, small businesses, and salary support simply vanished. But perhaps the most devastating discovery centered on what's known as Ways and Means, a financial mechanism meant to allow the central bank to lend small amounts to the government to cover short-term budget gaps. By law, this lending should never exceed 5% of the previous year's revenue, and the money must be repaid within the same fiscal year. Under Emefiele, those limits were ignored completely. Between 2017 and 2022, the government borrowed beyond control, over 23 trillion naira in total, with no repayment and minimal oversight. Documents revealed that many of these transactions lacked presidential approval. Some officials requested 500 billion naira and took 700 billion. In some cases, money was drawn with no authorization at all. By the end, Nigeria's Ways and Means debt ballooned to an astronomical 26 trillion naira, with interest still mounting. In a last-minute attempt to clean the books, the previous administration tried to convert this debt into long-term bonds, essentially hiding it under a different name. The National Assembly even amended the CBN Act to raise the borrowing limit from 5% to 15%, but it was too late. The damage was done. In the end, Emefiele's fall was inevitable. The same system that once shielded him now abandoned him. As the investigations deepened, the scale of corruption exposed under his leadership revealed not just one man's greed, but an entire network of political and economic rot. Emefiele's defenders insist he's being made a scapegoat, that Nigeria's economic collapse cannot be pinned on a single individual. But his critics argue that no one held more power over Nigeria's financial destiny, and no one did more to destroy its credibility. Today, as the legal battles continue, one question still echoes. Was Godwin Emefiele the architect of a $30 billion fraud, or just a man who knew too much, brought down by the same forces he once served?